Some of you who watched the previous Gundam lore video on the origins of the Titans test team might have been wondering why they're called the Black Otter team, despite the fact that everything else has a rabbit theme, the names of their mobile suits, the art of their emblems, etc. And well, you're not alone. Carl and Elliot were wondering the same thing. So in today's episode of Gundam Lore, we're having a look at why the Black Otter team uses rabbits as their mascots. And as to be expected, our story starts with yet another fight between Carl and Elliot. This time, Carl decided to draw a personalized emblem for Elliot on his helmet. The problem was, he didn't ask Elliot if it was okay beforehand, and Elliot interpreted his art as him just scribbling on his helmet. Again, this fight took place in front of the mechanics and didn't stop until a very pissed off Audrey intervened and broke him up. Both of them quickly cooled down and Carl decided that now was a good moment to score with Audrey. It wasn't. She then told them to get their asses back into gear and get the final checks on their mobile suits done. But they weren't the only ones in Audrey's line of fire either. Next up was team leader Murphy. Audrey sternly told him that if he saw them fighting, he should have stopped them. Some people had already started calling them the Black Rabbit Troublemaker Combo, a nickname that Audrey found quite embarrassing. Murphy couldn't really disagree with the nickname, since it was the truth, but he also told Audrey not to worry about it too much. Those two would grow up in no time, and he also told her that now was actually probably the most peaceful time. Audrey looked at him and didn't buy his excuse. Murphy apologized and Audrey walked off. But what Murphy said wasn't just an excuse. For what was to come, an attitude like that could actually be the key to their survival. For now though, things were peaceful and Carl and Elliot were talking about their scolding by Audrey. Still, for Carl, getting scolded by a beauty was significantly better than getting chewed out by an old man, if only she didn't keep up her guard so much. At this point, Elliot asked him what the hell he was on about and changed the topic to what Carl was doing. Since he'd gotten his first kill, he decided to paint a kill mark on his gym and said that he would do the same for Elliot as well. That is, if he could even manage to shoot an enemy down before he'd forget his promise. It was at this point that Carl noticed that their team emblem was a rabbit despite them being called the Black Otter team. He asked Elliot about it, but he also had nothing. Maybe someone was a big fan of rabbits? There was no way it was their team leader, so their next thought was that it had to be Audrey. And talking about Audrey, at the same time she was floating towards the briefing room, thinking about how she'd have to show the rest of her team a thing or two about discipline. But as soon as she turned on the light, her scream echoed throughout the ship, alarming Carl and Elliot, who rushed to her aid. And they found her paralyzed with fear on the floor of the briefing room. After all, on the other side of the room was a rabbit.
There he is. Where? There. What, behind the rabbit? There is the rabbit.
As it turned out, Audrey wasn't a big fan of animals and was quite afraid of even a small bunny. Both Carl and Elliot were in complete disbelief, not sure how to respond to this quite weird situation. But they wouldn't be in this situation for long. A cargo shuttle en route to their ship had come under attack and needed immediate assistance. It was assumed that it was Zeon remnants who were after supplies, but the first distress signal that they received said that the shuttle was under attack from friendly units. Yet another weird situation that they found themselves in. Before launching, Carl couldn't help but tease Elliot one more time and said that this was his chance to earn himself a kill mark too. Murphy quickly shut him up and said that if they were only going after kill marks, they would quickly become a kill mark themselves. When they arrived at the shuttle, they found it intact, but their escorts had been completely wiped out. There was also no sign of any enemy units, until suddenly, one of the gyms started firing at them. Naturally, they were caught completely off guard, and in their confusion, a Rigdom also snuck up on them. At this point, it was clear what was going on, and they started their counterattack. Carl tried sniping the Gym, but it stuck too close to the cargo shuttle. In response, Elliot went after it with his high-mobility Gym and took it out, earning him his first kill. Meanwhile, Carl managed to land a hit on the Rigdom, and Murphy drove it off. The battle was over, and they confirmed the status of the shuttle. Their escort had been lost, but the shuttle and its crew were doing okay. And as they towed it to their ship, Elliot reminded Carl about his promise to paint him a kill mark. Back on the ship then, a terrified Audrey was waiting for an explanation for that rabbit in the briefing room. Turns out, it was in fact Murphy's rabbit, a Netherlands dwarf rabbit called Peter. And it was this bunny that had served as inspiration for the Black Otter team's insignia. Elliot and Carl didn't really know how to respond to this, but Audrey was quick to act. She grabbed a pen and paper and declared that the briefing room was now an animal-free zone. She then made sure that all three clearly understood it. For the sake of his rabbit, Murphy had better make sure to no longer forget him there. And of course, our story ends just as it began. After the rabbit fiasco, Carl got to work on painting Elliot's kill mark and then proudly presented it to him. He'd made sure to paint a giant mark on a quite eye-catching location. Or in his words, it makes no sense to paint it in a spot where nobody sees it. Although in reality, he knew that painting it in such a way would piss off Elliot. And this time, Audrey had no more energy left to stop the troublemaker combo from fighting. So there we go, a relatively long video for a relatively short answer. And slowly but surely we see our two Titans Tsunderes grow closer, with some interesting dynamics within the rest of the team too. Other than that, it also showed us an interesting reality of the post-1 year war world. Zeon remnants trying to survive by raiding Federation transports, a concept that was also brought up in École du Ciel. But that's all for this video. As always, a big thank you to the Patreon supporters. I hope all of you watching have a great day, and I'll see you all next time.